It's been 3 weeks since I ran my first ultra marathon, the 52 miles. Before this run, the furthest I had ever gone was 26.2 miles, and that was in April. I had done that as a training block for the run, to prepare for the run. And all my running that I've done for the past year, since June last year, all my running has been road running at an altitude of about 1,300 feet elevation. And then this run that I did was about 9,000 feet elevation, and it was a trail run. So, I mean, there were some differences, but the training, I feel like, was still relevant, even though it wasn't trail running. But because the elevation is so much lower, the week beforehand, we went to Utah, and we camped for a week at Dutch John at the Flaming Gorge. If you haven't been to the Flaming Gorge, definitely go check it out. It is such a pretty place. I actually documented that whole week, all the activities that we did. And so that is, all those videos are also on my channel. So if you want to see what it's like, go watch those videos. So we got a little high elevation training for the week. And then we did a little like miniature hike runs on the terrain that was going to closely mimic the terrain that we were going to be on the mountain. The only difference is there was no mud and there was no water in Utah. It was dry as a bone. On the mountain, we had mud, and we had water, and lots of rocks. The amount of times I hit my foot on a rock was, I feel like I kicked a rock at least like 100 times. I have my two big toes, and then the toes next to them bruised. One of them is pretty dead. I kicked a rock real hard, and it's all the way black. It's not going to make it. I ran in Ultras, the Lone Peak Ultras, and then I wore the Injinji toe socks, and it was perfect. Like, I didn't have any issues with either of those. I only got one blister, but it wasn't because of the shoe. It was because a tiny little pebble got into my shoe towards the end of the race, back of my heel. It was rubbing, and because I was like, I just got to get it to the finish line, I wasn't willing to stop and take it out, so I got a blister there. But other than that, as far as the shoes and socks goes, it was great. We went through mud, we went through water. I'm happy. I'm happy with it. I'm a believer of those socks, and I'm a believer of those shoes. So, for the race, we woke up at 1:45 in the morning. We went and got to the bus. So the bus was going to leave at 3:15 a.m. And then the race started at 5 a.m. And for stats, so the elevation starting was 8,993. I have it on my phone right here. There was a gain of 6,617 feet. So the first half of the run, you're starting at the top of the mountain, and then you just go straight down for the first 18 miles. And then mile 18 is when you start to go up on the wall, which is, it's the climb, the wall. Like, they say when you're running a marathon and you hit mile 18 is when you generally bonk and you hit the physical wall. On this one, you actually have a wall you have to climb. I think it lasts like, so it's 18, 19, 20, 21 or 22 is when it's over. I can't remember. I just know it was so challenging. It was challenging like mentally and emotionally because you're just going up, right? You need your poles because it's just up. There are some people who obviously train in the mountains. You can tell who has mountain legs and who doesn't have mountain legs, because the ones who had mountain legs, they were just trucking up so easily without any poles. And I'm just like, I want to be just like you when I grow up, because I got my poles and I'm struggling. It wasn't so much of a muscle burn as it was like, even though I had a week of elevation training, it's not enough. It's not like if you're living there. And so you just feel so tired. Like, it just zaps your energy so fast. So it was hard because you feel like you're just out of energy, and then you can't go very fast. And that part was frustrating. At least I couldn't go very fast. And so I got frustrated with the pace that I was going. I think my last mile was like 31 minutes going up that thing. And so I came up with this little mantra. I just kept telling myself, slow go is better than no go, as a way to be okay with the fact that I felt like I was going so slow. But I was like, you know what? If I'm moving, that's good enough. It's better than not moving at all. So that one, it wore on my emotions so much because you're going up, and then you hit where it levels out, and you're like, okay, I'm done. But then it goes right back up, and then it levels out, and you're like, okay, I'm finally done. Right back up. It does this like 6 times, at least 6 times, and you're just like, it just, it can get frustrating. I think that was the hardest part of the race, was that 18-mile wall. And then after that, everything was pretty, I'll put on the screen like each mile. I think we had 10 aid stations. I'll put on the screen the elevation of each aid station, because we're just going up and down this whole time. And then the aid stations were timed. Some of them are timed, and if you don't get to that aid station in time, then you can't continue the race. So there was like this pressure of like, move, you have to keep moving. And then I felt like I couldn't stop for anything really, anything extra. This whole year that I was training for this ultra, I was thinking like, I'm going to go up a mountain. I need to make sure I can climb. So I practiced all years on my ups, but it didn't occur to me to practice my downs. And when you're going, it's like for 18 miles, just down, 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 down. It's like, because you step, but it's almost like a stop, 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 stop. Each step is like a stop. Even if you try to dance it, it's still kind of like each step is an aggressive stop. And that's a lot of pressure to put on your knees for 18 miles. And so my knees got so sore. They felt so sore. And so it got to where like I could not run the downs. I had to just like quickly kind of walk down. And so some of my miles ended up being like 15-minute miles, 16-minute miles, 18-minute miles with just like speed walking, you know? And so because of that, I was like, I was so worried that I wouldn't make aid stations. And so I wasn't going to stop for anything. As far as nutrition goes, every hour I took salt. I did 1,000 milligrams of salt. I don't know if that was too much or not, but it seemed to work. 1,000 milligrams of salt every hour. And then every half hour to an hour, I did like a goo pouch. And then obviously staying hydrated with water and like electrolyte drinks that they would have at the aid stations. And then I took ketone IQs. I had 3. I took 1 before the race ever started. And then you have 2 drop bags. So 1 at mile 18, 1 at mile 35. And so each of those bags also had ketone IQ. So I took those. Another thing that Jake and I had agreed to before we started the race was that somebody had to finish the race. And so I'm like, no matter if someone falls behind, the person in front has to keep going because someone has to win this thing. Not win it, but, you know, cross the finish line. And so I feel like going with a person helps a lot, because when you're together, it's like a dream team, and you're bouncing off of each other's energy, you're keeping each other motivated. And then if one of us is ahead, you feel like you're carrying the team, or you're like, I have to make it to this finish line because I don't know if they're going to make it. And then when you're behind, you're like, I need to catch up to this person. And so there's always like an incentive to keep going, regardless if you're behind, ahead, or together. So thankful that I was able to do it with my husband, because I feel like it was just a really cool experience to go through with someone that you care about a lot, a very hard and challenging thing, and you have an important person with you going through that. It's a really cool experience to go through. Those races break you down into like, it basically strips you down. When you feel like you've given all you can give, like you're out there and you have nothing. There's nothing. It's you and it's nature, and you're just going. And so it gets to a point sometimes where you're just like, I literally feel like I'm at my end. I can't go further. And it's just pushing past that over and over and over again. It just strips you down to the most raw version of yourself. Almost like you get in tune with yourself in a way that you just can't do in real life. And the other thing is like the closeness you feel with God. In real life, when we're just going day to day, if we're struggling with something, there are so many things to turn to that before we turn to God, right? So many things to like make us feel better. And it's kind of shallow, you know? But when you're out there and there's nothing to turn to, all you have is God. When you're struggling, you're asking for strength. And when you're thriving, you're thanking Him for the strength to be, that you are in a place of like, where you feel good, you feel strong. So it took me 14 hours and 41 minutes to finish the race. And so it's basically like 14 hours of praying, which is it's a crazy thing to experience. And you have like this beautiful, beautiful scene. It's just mountains, there's green, there's flowers, there's waterfalls, there's bodies of water. It's like everything about it is beautiful, but at the same time, the most challenging thing you've ever done in your life. But putting those two things together, it's just, I feel like everyone should have an opportunity to run an ultra marathon just to experience what it feels like to be at your end of what you feel like you can give, and then push past that and realizing like your limits are kind of like in here. The limits we put on ourselves, because your body can keep going. If you fuel your body properly, it can keep going. It's whether or not you can mentally keep going. And so doing that run was like, it shows you, it's like you flip a switch and you become a version of yourself that you didn't even know you could be. So I feel like everyone should experience that. And there were so many times, because the stations are timed, there are so many times, it's such an emotional roller coaster, because you're like, I don't know if I can make this cutoff. And so it's almost like you convince yourself that you're okay if you don't make the cutoff. But then you see the cutoff, you see the aid station, and you're looking down, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make it. And it's like this wave of emotion just comes over you involuntarily. Like you have no control over it, but it's like this sense of relief. And it's just, it's something that like, I can try to explain these things, but if you have to experience it to really know what that feels like. But the relief that you feel is just overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And then it's like all the fear and all the doubt and all the everything you're trying to bottle down comes up and you just feel words are inadequate. Words are inadequate to even explain what the experience is like, but it's so beautiful. It's a beautiful part of life, you know? And the fact that a body, we can physically do those things, it's crazy. It's crazy that we're even capable of doing things like that. Recovery was hard. That was the hardest part. After we finished the race, immediately the body just like locks up. Like when you're running the race, you're so focused on, I have to get to this finish line. There's no other option. I have to get to this finish line. That you almost like tune everything out. Everything the body is doing, you kind of just like tune it out. And then you get to that finish line and you stop moving, and then everything just like locks up. And maybe this isn't for everybody. Maybe it's just for me because I didn't train on a mountain. Like I trained on flat ground, right? And so it's like running twice as far as I've ever ran on top of running on a mountain, running a terrain that my body isn't used to running on. And so my calves were insanely sore. As soon as I stopped moving, my calves immediately locked up. The bottoms of my feet, my arches immediately locked up. So I'm like awkwardly hobbling everywhere. And then my shoulder, the front of my shoulder right here, it was so sore. I remember even in my video where I was documenting the actual run, my kid went to hug me and I'm like, I can't lift my arm up. Like it was so painful. And that lasted for about, it was probably a week before I could start walking normal again. Oh, I forgot to mention, so after the run, my legs were so swollen. Like, so from my calves all the way down to my toes, it was like one straight tube. There was no definition at all. They were so swollen, so painful. Probably for like a week. It probably lasted for like a week before I had normal toes and normal ankles, and I could like see the actual shape of my body instead of just being like a tube. I wish I would have taken pictures of that, because that was the most bizarre thing I've ever gone through for the way that my lower extremities looked. And so when I was healing, I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is like, the recovery was so painful, but that I said I was never going to run an ultra ever again. And then the pain subsides, and then you're like, you know what? That experience, you kind of forget the pain, and the experience that you went through, you have that memory still. And you're like, maybe I want to do that again. Maybe I do want to do it again. And I remember the day after the race, I was laying in bed. I'm just like laying on my stomach, and I kept dozing off. And every time I would doze off, I would start to dream that there was a mountain. And as soon as I would step a foot on the mountain, my body would just like jolt awake. You know those dreams where you're falling asleep and all of a sudden you like jump because you feel like you're falling? It was like that, but it was like my brain would not allow me to go back on that mountain. And so, but because I was so sore, every time I would put a foot on the mountain and jump and like jolt awake, I would tense, and the soreness was so unbearable. Like the pain was, it was so, and that happened like 5 or 6 times in a row where I just kept jolting awake, and that was pretty painful. And then I also got poison ivy, so that was fun. So when I first started the run, I remember like the first, like, it's probably like a half mile in, my calves, my soleus immediately, the lactic acid immediately was there, and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just get myself into? And so I was kind of like psyching myself out, and I was like, my calves are burning so bad immediately when I just started this run. And with the high elevation, I was trying to figure out my breathing, so I had a stitch in my rib. The bottom of my foot started cramping, and I was legit like, my gosh, I'm not going to be able to run these 52 miles. I'm already suffering, and I'm only like a half mile into this thing. But about 5 miles into it, everything kind of balanced out, so grateful for that. And then it felt good. Overall, it was a success, and I feel like I would at some point do it again. I haven't ran since running the ultra. I don't know when I'm going to get back to running. So far, I've been just biking. I don't know what I'm going to do after this. Like, I don't know what my next goal is, but we'll see. We'll see what happens after this. If there's anything that I didn't answer, let me know. Anything you're curious about, just let me know, and I'll answer it in the comments. It's hard when you go through this and then you try to like retrace and like remember everything. You can't remember everything. So if there's any details that I should have talked about and I left out, let me know in the comments and I will get to them. That's the end of this video. I'll see you in the next one.